Yo, what's going on, coin traders? Thanks for joining me for the show. Looking at Toncoin, TON on the ticker, a new coin for the channel. Excited to jump into it, especially with this epic rally that we have seen, especially getting this much parabolic. So we have a lot to talk about with regard to Toncoin and whether or not we're going to see continuation of this epic rally right now with TON for the Open Network. A very, very nicely hyped project right now and definitely in the spotlight, especially with all these nice gains. Meanwhile, all the other cryptos are pulling back or sitting sideways. So this is one of the things that creates a lot of nice hype and why we have been seeing a lot of nice buying here recently. Now, with all of this huge, massive rally, we actually saw Toncoin get pushed into the number 9 spot, which is pretty crazy, right behind Dogecoin right now and actually overtaking Cardano ADA. And not only that, but it's actually pretty significantly higher above. So we're looking at over 20, about 25% higher than ADA right now. So it's very nicely secure in its number 9 spot. Could actually see if we do get continuation and overtaking of Dogecoin, which would be pretty crazy for Toncoin. So a lot of huge incoming rally for Toncoin and definitely a lot of momentum and hype for Toncoin. But also with such a huge rally lately, we do need to talk about potential downsides. So we could be looking at a slippage of that. So back into the chart here. Okay, so do want to start off on the daily chart and do want to talk about where we found our effective bottom back towards the end of February. So you can see that right now we have been looking at extremely nice gains, looking at 250% about to current prices right now at 7.25. So we're looking at about 50 days for that. So extremely nice upside and obviously a ton of upside. So as you can see, when we jump into the weekly, just extreme vertical and like we said, parabolic moves. But we also know that the charts are still favoring a lot of upside momentum just based on how this trend is going. So one of the first things that we do want to talk about and look at is just how we're maintaining extremely nice support on top of this 12-period daily exponential moving average. So a little bit of dip below, selling below to actually push prices below and see this close, but we found an immediate push back up and buying above that level. So typically when we do have a loss of a level like this, if we do maintain it for a day or two after, or whatever the bar time frame is, then typically we know that that's going to be a strong indication that that is going to be a relevant level to hold up. So for example, if this follow-on bar actually didn't see buying and close on top of this 12-period EMA, we would know that that's going to be a little bit more relevant signal, and then we would look down to the 26 period. But because we actually saw a lot of dip buying and actually a follow-through to push prices back on top, we could confirm that as a very nice point of support and actually kind of invalidating that, especially because we see kind of a Marubozu bottom here with no lower wick. So essentially, especially since crypto trades 24/7, we know that this was kind of more or less a timing issue and not necessarily an issue of whether or not this was going to be a relevant level. So we know that especially since it has been relevant this whole time, we're looking at this as being a very nice test. And again, did get nice confirmation again before the last 4 days here of just extreme upside that we are looking at. Now, the other nice thing on this daily is that every retracement we saw declining bearish volume. So declining bearish volume on this pullback to confirm, and then on the second attempt as well, declining bearish volume. This pullback, declining bearish volume. And even that we saw week over week, or time over time of each of these pullbacks actually having decreased selling pressure as well, and then accumulating at this minimal bearish day, which volume for that was only 3.29 million. So compared that to the most recent 4 days, we're looking at 18.5, 24.6, and then we saw 14.4, and then finally on the current day, we're looking at 18.4 with about 5 hours left to close, so we are expecting that to grow a lot more. So the overall point here is that we're looking very nice on the bullish pumps, a lot of nice bullish volume coming in on each upside move. And then even in the consolidation points here, minimal volume, but that's exactly what we want to see before we see our very nice breakout, big volume and continuation and follow through. So on this daily, we have an extremely nice point of resistance, and it's actually kind of a price level zone and also a level of closing resistance here. So from about 548 to about 556. So this is a very nice zone that, as you can see, saw a lot of periods of rejection on each of these attempts, but we actually held a very nice support point. So if we look at the closing level of support, we're looking at support coming in at 484. So effectively sat very nice in this sideways pattern before having our extremely nice bullish break on top of that. So as you can see, once we actually saw a very nice movement to the upside, huge follow through volume came in compared to the previous week of trading. And that's exactly what confirmed this breakout, especially with 4 days of nice continuous follow through. Now, obviously, the movement has been extreme from that. So we're looking at about 30% upside. And if we do look at a retracement, which is very normal to think we could get 23 to about 25% to the downside. But what's significant about this is that when we talk about previous levels of resistance, especially after these types of patterns, this is exactly what we want to see because it does start to secure this level as a lot more strength for support when we do get our pullback. Combine that with the fact that we are looking at these exponential moving averages as very nice support, then that is going to continue to be our guide to the upside, especially if and when we do break, for example, the support of this 12th. We'd be actually looking at a lot more nicer support before continuing to think that we could be losing this upside trend for Toncoin. So right now, there's no reason to think that we're going to be losing this trend because we have been starting it since the end of February. So we have been making our highs, holding our lows, consolidating, showing points of resistance that break with a lot of nice follow through, confirming the strength in this trend. And then we do know that even if we do see a retracement, and even if it is that significant 25% retracement, we're still maintaining this longer term uptrend with path of least resistance still to the upside as indicated by these exponential moving averages. Now, so that sounds great, and of course it is right now, but do have to flip over into the weekly chart and talk about this pattern because like we talk about, vertical patterns are not sustainable. So we know that the higher up this goes, the higher it does have to retrace, and the bigger retracements we do get, sometimes into the 50 to 60% range. And obviously that's not to say that that's going to come in yet because we do know that shorter term trends are still very much in control right now. But eventually all this very nice bullish volume that has come in to show a lot of this buying is going to eventually start to fade. And that's whether or not we can actually consolidate or whether or not we see that quick sell-off. Typically on all of these crypto spaces though, when we do get vertical like this, we ultimately end up seeing a pretty quick substantial retracement just because the hype and euphoria got so much. And then we start to see quick sell-offs, and then all of the volume that came in buying at the upper end and the peaks do start to panic and actually start to create a lot more of that selling pressure. And that's just kind of a trickle-down effect. So just be mindful and cautious that any buying right now is probably going to have to be a short-term trade. And obviously this is not financial advice, but because we have seen this much upside without any sort of retracement or longer-term consolidation, the higher up we go, the greater the risk, and obviously the higher increased likelihood of that pullback happening. But thankfully, since we are in the longer term charts, we can look at the shorter term charts first because we know we can't actually reverse the longer term weekly charts, for example, without actually reversing and creating a change in trend on some of the shorter term charts. So for example, right now, if we actually turn on stochastic RSI and RSI, you can just see how extremely overbought, obviously, we know just based on this chart pattern, how overbought it is. But obviously now with a technical indicator, so for example, RSI currently at 89.88. And if we look at stochastic RSI at the bottom, we're looking at almost being smashed up against the 100 line at the top. So we're basically effectively as high as this can go. So we are needing to see a little bit more of that retracement. Now, that doesn't mean initially this has to go extremely down, have a huge sell-off, but that is why the shorter term charts are going to be what we look at first and not necessarily just think weekly deserves an immediate retracement and pullback, because we know, and we have seen before, especially in crypto, when we do get hype, that these are pretty much irrelevant in bull markets and that we can still see prices get a lot higher. So again, not to say we can't and won't see prices get a lot higher for Toncoin, because we absolutely know that we do have the spotlight. So we're expecting prices to continue to go higher for a little bit. But when we do look at the longer term trend and we plan out our expectations for what we know is going to be happening in the future, that is exactly what we have to be thinking of and mindful of in the back of our mind, and helps us not to panic when we do start to see that type of movement. Now, do you want to switch over to the 12-hour chart? Because like we talked about switching trends, we're still looking extremely good, but do have the RSI pulled on right now. And we're starting to get 3 points right now of lower highs, yet meanwhile, 3 points of higher highs on the current trend. So starting to get a lot more of that bearish divergence on these technical indicators, which does mean a little bit of slowdown and reversal happening. And that's kind of another sign, especially when we talk about the longer term charts needing to cool down, that we can be thinking about creating exit type strategies, but also knowing we still can go higher. So now looking at the 4-hour chart right now, still very much intact and very much effective as well. And especially after a nice bull break from this little pennant consolidation period, still holding 12-period EMA on this 4-hour as well. And even if we do start to see a little retracement, we know that this is what we're going to look for support. So ideally, we would be looking for a continuation of consolidation in that instance, or even potentially a pause and a level for the price to actually bounce off of if we do start to get and continue to see a lot of this type of increased bullish volume. One thing like we mentioned though is that the higher we get, the increased likelihood of losing supports and actually starting to change the trend. So we know that just because TA says one thing isn't guaranteed, and that the higher the likelihood of one chart being overbought does start to impact the likelihood of indicators not being effective on other charts. So for that reason, the effectiveness of what we typically think starts to decrease the more we do get overextended on the longer term charts. So when we talk about trading, that is one of the things that makes us start to set our exit points and actually start to scale out in these types of positions, is that the risk does start to increase and that you do want to start locking in those gains if you are focused on shorter term profits. Now, one thing we do talk about frequently on the channel is just these parabolic type moves, and how after every parabolic type move, we do start to consolidate and continue for a next big parabolic move. So we can even see that on this type of chart. For example, mini parabolic move, consolidated, next big parabolic move, consolidated, turned into the next big parabolic move, consolidated, and then now we are on another parabolic move, which we would expect to actually continue. And then whether or not we see longer term pullback there, or we continue to see the next big leg of this parabolic move. So that's one of the things we are going to be eyeing on this continuation for Toncoin right now. So overall, still very nice to see this much hype and euphoria, and congrats to all the Toncoin bulls. It's definitely been exciting seeing this much rally and momentum in this short of a time period. But like we said, that does start to increase the likelihood and risk of a downside retracement and pullback. But definitely nothing to worry about right now, since we know that Toncoin is extremely in the spotlight and getting a lot of the hype right now, especially given its current place in the market cap rankings. So with that actually is going to go ahead and wrap up our video for Toncoin TON on that ticker. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you have not done so just yet. Also, make sure to drop me a note in the comment sections below. Issues, disagreements, predictions, all that stuff. Do love getting back to and hearing from each and every one of you. That is going to wrap it up for now, though. Do appreciate all the continued love and support. As always, it does mean so much. Stay safe, take care, and I'll catch you back in the next video.